Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to write a program that calculates the diagonal of a rectangle given its width and height. Here, because we want to do some mathematical operations, we are importing the math library to use its function. For example, one of the functions that we want to use is the sqrt. So this is why we type down the keyword import and then the math keyword, which means that we are going to use the math library and we are going to import the math library. Then we are going to show this message to the user, enter the width of the rectangle using the input function. And because whatever that we get from the user using the input function, it is by default in Python treated as a string, we need to convert it to a float. And because we want to convert it to a float, we are going to use the float function. And this is the float function. So we are using the float function. So everything that is inside these parentheses is going to be converted to the float. So therefore, I type down the input function inside the float function, and inside the input function parentheses, I say enter the width, for example, and the user is going to enter a number. That number is stored firstly in a string data type, and then it is going to be converted to a float, and the output is going to be assigned to the width variable. The same reasoning happens for the height variable. We are going to show this message to the user saying that, okay, enter the height of the rectangle, whatever the user is going to enter. Firstly, it is stored in a string data type. Then we are going to convert it to a float, and then it is assigned to the height of the rectangle. Okay. Then we are having this variable diagonal equals to the formulation. So this is the formulation to calculate the diagonal of a rectangle. In order to calculate that, we need to have a square root of width to the power of 2 plus height to the power of 2. Okay. And when we are having this output, we are going to calculate its square root, and it is going to give us the diagonal of a rectangle. So in order to compute the diagonal of a rectangle, first we need to have the output of width to the power of 2 plus height to the power of 2, and then have the square root of their summation. So this formula is written in Python like this. So we call this math function and math library, sorry, and then the sqrt function, then width to the power of 2, star 2 means to the power of 2, plus height to the power of 2, star 2, and then the output is assigned to diagonal variable. And finally, using the print function, we are trying to print the output saying that the diagonal of the rectangle is, then I type down the name of the diagonal variable, so it is going to print the output for me. So I type down the width of the rectangle is 10, for example, and the height of the rectangle is, for example, 25, and it calculates the diagonal of the rectangle. It says the diagonal is 26. So this is how we can calculate the diagonal of a rectangle given its width and height using the math library and square root sqrt function and to the power of 2 in Python. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to write a program that truncates a floating point number to its integer part without rounding. So to truncate means to remove the fractional part of a number, leaving only the integer part without rounding it up or down. For example, if we want to truncate number 3.9, the output would be 3. So how do we do that in Python? We're going to use the math library. So we type down import math, and then we are having this message being shown to the user, enter a floating point number. Then it is read using the input function from the user, and we learned that it will be by default a string, so we need to convert it to a float. Therefore, we type down the float function, and the right hand side is assigned, the output is assigned to the variable called number. Then in order to truncate the number, we type down math.trunc, TRUNC, and in parentheses, we type down the name of our variable. In this case, it is called number. So we have the math.trunc, and in parentheses, okay, we type down our variable. In this case, our variable name is number. And the output is assigned to a variable called truncated. And then we are printing the truncated in the output. So when I run this code, it says enter a floating point number. So I type down 3.14. It says the output is 3. I type down, for example, 1.85. It says the output is 5. I type down, for example, 20.5. It says 20. So we learned now we can use the math library and using the trunc function to truncate a number easily for us. Basically, it is going to remove the fractional part of our number and leaving only the integer part. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to write a program that calculates the maximum number of full tiles needed to cover a floor, given the area and the size of one tile. Here, what we mean by to cover a floor given the area. So for example, if the output is to have 28.5 tiles to cover the floor, when we are using the floor function, it is going to return number 28. So it is going to round it down. So let me illustrate it with an example. Here we are having the math library being imported. We are showing this message to the user, enter the total area of the floor in square meter. And we are storing it in area variable. Then we are saying that enter the size of one tile in a square meter. And we are going to store it in tile size variable. Then the variable tiles needed equals math.floor. So this is the floor is the function of the math library. And in parentheses, we are calculating this area divided by tile underscore size. Basically, if I run this code, it is going to be something like this. So enter the total area of the floor. So imagine that my for example, the room that I would like to cover it with tile is 20 square meters. And for example, enter the size of one tile in a square meter. And it's, for example, one tile is 0.7 square meter. Okay. So when I run, we see that the output says you will need 28 full tiles to cover the floor. But when this area is divided by tile size, which means 20 divided by 0.7, if you do it yourself with calculator, you will see that the output is 28.571, for example, approximately. Okay. But because we are using the floor function from the math library, we see that it is rounding it down to number 28. So it says that you need 28 full tiles to cover the floor. This is how actually this floor function from math library is going to work. So basically, we are going to ask the user to enter the size of the area of the floor in a square meter, for example, then the size of each tile in a square meter, and then divide the area by the tile size and round it down to the closest integer number. Then it is going to show us in the output using the print function saying that you will need, for example, 28 full tiles to cover the floor. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to write a program that calculates the total number of pages required to print a given number of lines, where each page can hold a fixed number of lines. Here, we are using the math library. We are asking the user enter the total number of lines to print. It is assigned to lines variable. Then we ask the enter the number of lines per page, and it is going to be assigned to lines per page variable. Then we are going to divide line by lines per page, okay? And then it is going to be assigned in pages variable. But we want to round it up. In order to round it up, I use the actually math library, and I also use or call the ceil function from the math library, and in parentheses I type down lines and then lines per page. For example, if I have, for example, 200 lines, and in each page there are 19 lines, so I would like to know how many pages do I need. So 200 is divided by 19. The result, if you do it yourself, will be approximately 10.52, but because we are using the ceil function, the output will be 11, so it is rounding it up. So let me run the code. It says enter the total number of lines to print. So the total number of lines, it's 200, for example. Then enter the number of lines per page. I would say it's 19, for example. It says you will need 11 pages to print 200 lines. But you see that 200 is divided by 19 in this formula here. 200 is divided by 19. But because we are using the ceil function, the output, which is 10.52, is rounded up to 11, and we see that in the output, number 11 is shown. So this is how we can use ceil function from the math library to round up the output for us. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we would like to write a program to calculate the number of possible arrangements of n objects. What do we mean the number of possible arrangements? It means that, for example, we are having two objects. Just take it as an example, X and O. There are how many possible arrangements for these two objects? There are two, in fact. The first possible arrangement is X and O, and the second one is O and X. So they're changing their place. So there are two possible arrangements for two objects, okay? Then for three objects, how we would have this X, O, and Y. For three objects, we have X, O, Y, O, X, Y, O, Y, X, X, Y, O, Y, X, O, and YOX. So there are 6 possible arrangements for 3 objects, okay? This is how we can do it manually, but it's very hard to do it. So I first need to do it carefully and make sure I'm not making any mistake. Then I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay? So here, in order to understand it in Python, it's very easy to use math library and factorial function to do this for us. We're going to tell the user enter the number of objects, and whatever the user is going to enter is stored in n, and simply we are using the math library and then factorial function, and in parentheses we put the name of our variable, which is n. So when I run this code, it says enter the number of objects. I say 2. It says the number of possible arrangements is 2. So if I run one more time and enter the number of objects, so this time I enter 3, it says that the number of possible arrangements is 6. So here is the output. So this is what I did myself to calculate it, and here is the output in Python in just 1 second. So if we mention that we have 4 objects, we see that the output is 24. Basically, it is going to calculate n factorial for us. It means that if we have n object, there are n factorial possible arrangements. So if we have only 2 objects, for example, therefore we are having 2 factorial, therefore the output is 2. But if we are having 3 objects, it will be 3 factorial, and the output is 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 1, so the output is 6. And when we are having 4 objects, the output is 4 factorial, and it means that we are having 24 possible arrangements. And it's very hard to compute it when we are dealing with a large number of objects. For example, if we are going to have, for example, 5 objects, we see that the possible arrangement, is 120. Then if we are having, for example, 8 objects, we see that the possible arrangement, is 40,320. So we see that it's very useful to do things in Python. It's easier and it will give us a solution very fast. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we would like to write a program to calculate the time in years it will take for an investment to double at a given annual interest rate using the following formula. So this is the formula, and we are having the logarithm 2 divided by logarithm plus rate. And it is going to be assigned to a variable called time, and we are going to print time in the output. So first of all, we're going to ask the user enter the annual interest rate as a decimal. For example, for 5%, we type down 0.05. Then whatever the user is going to enter is stored in the rate variable. And then we type down exactly this formula in Python here. Okay, but we need to have the math library. So math.log, in parentheses we type down 2 divided by math.log 1 plus rate, and rate is something that we got from the user, and this is assigned to the variable called time. We call it time, it can be anything, and then we print the output of the time. So when I run this code, it says enter the annual interest rate. For example, the annual interest rate is of 5%, and with 5% of annual interest rate, it would take 14 years, almost 14 years, for my investment to be doubled. Okay, so if I put $100 in my investment bank account, it would take 14 years, approximately 14 years, for my investment to become $200, so to be doubled. So this is how we can calculate it in Python using the math library and logarithm function. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we would like to write a program to find the remainder of a division. In order to review, when we want to divide 10 by 2, 10 is our numerator and 2 is our denominator. Okay, so we are asking the user to enter a numerator and we are storing it in variable x. For example, let's say I name it x. And then I am asking the user to enter the denominator, and whatever the user is going to enter is going to store in a variable called y. Okay, so a numerator is asked from the user, which is stored in x. A denominator is asked from the user, and it is stored in y. Then, in order to find the remainder, I need to use the math library and fmode function. So this is my fmode function, and to access that, I need to type down math.fmode. And in parentheses, I need to put two arguments, one before comma and one after comma. So the one that is before comma, I need to put my numerator, and my numerator is stored in variable x as you see it here. So I type down x, and then after comma, I need to type down my denominator, which is stored in variable y. And we can name it whatever we want. We can name it h, we can name it r. It depends on what we want, okay? Then this fmode function from the math library is going to calculate the remainder of the division of my numerator divided by denominator, and we are going to use the print function to print our remainder in the output. So when I run this code, it says enter the numerator here, okay? So I want to divide 10 by 2, for example. 10 is my numerator and my denominator is 2. It says the remainder of 10 divided by 2 is 0. Yes, okay. So if I type down my numerator to be 11 and my denominator to be 2, now we see the remainder of 11 divided by 2 is 1. So using the fmode function from the math library, we can easily find the remainder of a division. Thank you for watching.